All right, welcoming to the show. You might know him from our other podcasts, The Blindsiders, and Meet You at Breakfast, and most importantly, Wicked Good Show. Started it all, the first podcast in the Wicked Good Everything brand.
Yes,
Welcome,
sir.
DJ Clubber
Thank you,
Lang
Brian.
himself, Dylan. Dylan, how you doing?
I'm thrilled to be here. Sports is probably my main other than movies, I guess, is probably
Right.
the main point of entertainment that I focus on, but it'll be nice. I'm looking forward to it. I have some sad things to talk about, some happy
Mhm.
things to talk about. A lot going on with football right now. So, yeah, thanks. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, so I guess let's start off with the sad, if you will. But we got to take the good with the bad. The University of Notre Dame has come in second place. I don't know how to say it better than that. They lost the national title, but I mean, they made it all the way to the end of January playing football. Can you kind of take me through the season as a Notre Dame fan?
Yeah, so first things first, Ohio State deserves all the credit in the world. That's a very, very, very good football
Yeah.
team. I was just happy that Notre Dame ended up being able to hang around there in the end
Mhm.
because my entire life, even before that, they've pretty much have been out of these games. Since the dawn of this current century, they haven't won a national title since 1988.
Mhm.
Notre Dame impressed me a lot, but Ohio State for sure deserves all the credit in the world. That's a really, really good team. Ryan Day, I'm a big hater of Ryan Day, but he kind of got last laugh on this season compared to everybody else. The only thing you can knock him on is he lost to Michigan. Like, if losing to Michigan at the end of the season means winning a national title, I will take that every single year. I know Ohio State and Michigan rivalry is different, but I take natties over regular season wins 10 times out of 10. So all the credit in the world to Ohio State. I mean, Notre Dame just could not stop that offense pretty much up until the end. And Ohio State did nothing but put up points. And that final home run ball, I think, uh, I think Jeremiah Smith caught. I think
Mhm.
he's the who caught at the end. That was kind of just
Dagger. Yeah.
the final dagger in the game. But um, yeah, I mean, for the first time, probably in my life, I feel uh, the best I ever have with um, first 12 team college playoff. They make it to the national title. I mean, they started this game. If this was like a UFC fight, they started this fight with a massive haymaker.
Mhm.
Really, really, that first drive, Riley Leonard, just complete dominance up front. They looked awesome, but then Ohio State countered with, a four punch combo that just completely staggered us for the rest of the fight.
Mhm.
And Notre Dame just had no answers for Ohio State, and pretty much up until the end. And Brian Freeman, who I think is top 3 coaches in college football right now. They've been a second half team a lot of these playoff games, and I knew that they would make the adjustments, but Ohio State was just too good. Notre Dame's defense, both offense and defense, were just getting killed up front most of the game. Will Howard was just moving the ball at will. Every time Notre Dame went into zone coverage, there was a receiver getting open. Every time they were going into man, they were getting burned. And in between that, Will Howard was just running all over your team like he was
Mhm.
Josh Allen. It
Right.
was just Ohio State deserves all the praise that they get, but I also think that Notre Dame has really kind of put themselves in a spot that they have not been in a very, very long time. Where I think that they've kind of proven that they deserve to be back in these spots. This is not at all like the 2012 national championship against Alabama, where Notre Dame really had no business being on the same field as that team. I think that they've proven they belong here. I think there's a lot to keep building on. A lot of this Notre Dame team is young. They will be losing 2 of their best defensive players into this draft, most likely, with Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts. So that is going to hurt. But I don't know. There's a lot to be happy about. I mean, you talk about the journey of the season. Obviously, they start the season with their biggest win, um, probably in like 30 years, beating Texas A&M at home in College Station against at Texas A&M. Massive win. You're beating an SEC team on the road to open the season. That was huge. And then obviously, the next week they come back and they lose to NIU at home, and that was just I was already completely out
I
of
remember
the
you on Twitter after that game just being despondent.
I was, and rightfully so. I kind of thought, this is typical Notre Dame. Nothing's going to change with Brian Freeman. Riley Leonard was not the answer.
Mhm.
I was like, there's no way they're even going to make the playoffs at this point. And at this point, USC was looking really good. I go, they're not even going to end up beating USC anyway. The two loss Notre Dame's not going to get into the playoff. It
Right.
doesn't matter. My world literally was coming crumbling. And at this point, the Patriots, I knew they sucked, even though they already beat the Bengals. So both football teams I had rooted for, it was just the end of the world. But then Notre Dame proved us wrong, and they rattled off, 13 straight wins after that. Got into the playoff. I thought they should have been a bit of a higher seed, but I mean, they ended up getting a kind of a great path. I knew Georgia was going to be a tough team for them to beat, but beating Georgia was kind of that was already huge for us. 'Cause once again, you're beating an SEC team in the playoffs. Um, Obviously, a lot surrounding that game with the tragedy in New Orleans, and
Yeah.
I was just really, really proud of Notre Dame winning that. And at that point, we were kind of playing with house money because I really, like I just said, I was not expecting Notre Dame to go this far to begin with, let alone beat an
Right.
SEC team. And I don't want to hear, they're playing with their backup quarterback. Uh, um, I, I I think that was still a very, very good Georgia team, and
Mhm.
I was really proud of Notre Dame beating them there. But then after that, we get to Penn State, and I really I knew Notre Dame had a chance against Penn State. I felt really good about it, but just once again, they won that game. They looked like crap in the first half. They had that drive at the end with Steve Angeli that allowed them to put points on the board. That kind of probably saved the game. And then second half, like I said, Marcus Freeman and this team has been a second half team the whole year. They come back, they win that game, and then obviously we're in the national championship. And I gave Notre Dame a shot against Ohio State the entire time. I was really surprised the spread coming into it. I think started at it might have started at 9.5, moved to 8.5. Um, you know, I thought that was really high based on how Notre Dame's defense had been playing, how their offense had probably been overperforming at this point. But I really like their chances. But Ohio State looks so good. I think Ohio State had one of the best playoff runs ever. They looked incredible. I don't put this team above the teams like I think the 2009 the team with Cam Newton, that would have been 2009, 2010.
Mhm.
I don't put them above the 2019 LSU Tigers. That in my opinion is the greatest college football team ever to win a national
Yeah.
championship.
Right.
Was that Joe Burrow team?
Yep.
But this Ohio State team, like they deserve all the credit. I hate the conversation about them having a $20 million NIL payroll, maybe potentially higher. I mean, I think that's the current state of college football. I don't think that unless there's going to be regulations on like a salary cap or something like that for the NIL, I don't think that they should be knocked for that because Notre Dame, they've already said Notre Dame said, we're never going to be the people competing. Their whole thing is we're going to be going through the recruitment, and I think obviously clearly it's starting to work for them. Riley Leonard obviously came in through a transfer. I don't think Notre Dame has to disclose their financials because they're a private institution
Mhm.
and they don't belong to a conference. We don't know for sure what their kind of NIL payroll is, but I know it's nowhere near $20 million. But I don't think
Mhm.
that should be a knock on Ohio State. That's the current state of college football. I would hope my team, if they have the money to spend and are willing to spend it, would go in and spend as much as possible.
Yeah.
So,
We
I
just
mean,
gotta get the Pope involved. We gotta get him to be a big college football fan.
I it I do think that there needs to be some sort of cap. There needs to be more
Yes.
regulation on it. College football, I think, is in a great spot in terms of entertainment. I think in a
Mhm.
few years, we're probably going to see a break off of the SEC and Big Ten. That's like all the rumor. And who knows kind of where we're going to be at that point. And then I think that there's going to be a whole conversation for Notre Dame of where they go from there. I would imagine, Notre Dame's not going to take a back seat um, if that does if that event does happen of the SEC and Big Ten breaking off to kind of do their own league, I have a hard time believing that Notre Dame at that point can just stay in the NCAA.
Right.
Um, that's going to get real messy. I have no idea what that looks like for other teams too, for sports outside of football. I don't
Mhm.
really know what that looks like because Notre Dame is like this kind of like part-time ACC school too, where pretty much all other sports they play an ACC schedule or in the ACC conference. So it's like that could potentially get really messy. But I am just I'm over the moon about Notre Dame even have to lose. and they didn't roll over and die like they have in
They
games they
fought
faced
back in this
before.
game. They made it
And I
fun.
think part of the frustrating part too, because I do think that you know after they threw that first punch against Ohio State, when they got countered by Ohio State, like I said earlier, I just think that they were too staggered to come back from that. But Ohio State just looked, like I said, they were moving the ball at will.
Right.
And Kirk Herbstreit said it during the game that Notre Dame's offense was not designed, you know, come back from being down by 2 scores, 3 scores later
Mhm.
in the game. They're just not, and that's the truth. Riley Leonard, carried the ball 17 times, 40 yards, and I
Yeah.
think 8 of those were the first drive.
Mhm.
Ohio State completely shut down Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love had 4 carries for 3 yards. That was shocking. I don't think he was at 100%. I think he's been hurt since the Indiana game.
Mhm.
Um, but, you know, they said that he was, as close to 100%. So that was pretty disappointing. Love obviously had that great run to, I think, take the lead against Penn State, where it looked like he was going down. And he just kept fighting and got into the end zone. So I
Mhm.
was really hoping for a bigger game for him. But even Jadarian Price, who was also a very good running back, just three carries for 13 yards. They just could not move the ball on the ground because they were getting crushed up front. And so I think when you're forcing Riley Leonard to then go to the air most of the game, uh, things aren't going to go great for you. Um, Jaden Greathouse was very surprising. He's a guy. He had the 2 touchdowns for Notre Dame. He looked great. This was kind of his big coming out party that Notre Dame fans have been waiting for.
Mhm.
Um, they're very similar to a team like the Patriots, where their wide receiver room is not great.
Mhm.
And this day and
Thought you
age,
were gonna
when you
say very similar, they have a lacrosse player, playing wide receiver.
too, yeah, former quarterback as well. They have on their roster. Yeah, it's just that wide receiver room is not a team that with Riley Leonard at quarterback is gonna kind of come back in a shootout. But Jaden Greathouse was great. 6
Mhm.
receptions, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns on the biggest stage of the year. So I'm kind of taking those positives as we go. And Jadarian Price will seemingly be back next year. Jeremiah Love will be back next year as long as none of them transfer because they were both true sophomores coming this year.
Mhm.
Jaden Greathouse will be coming back. Uh, uh, Eli Raridon, who's their backup tight end, will be back. Um, Jordan Faison will be back, assuming none of these guys transfer. So they have a lot of people coming back, both on the line and in skill positions. I think that they're going to be a very, very good team next year. It's all going to be about what they do with quarterback. My assumption is that they're not going to go to the portal. They're going to have Steve Angeli, who was the backup this year, kind of go into a quarterback battle with CJ Carr, who
Mhm.
is their big up and coming quarterback, who's the grandson of Lloyd Carr. Um, uh, they have another who's currently actually third string right now, Kenny Minchie, who I like a lot, but I don't think that he'll be in the running. He's a guy I wouldn't be surprised if he transfers, but I think going into the spring, it's going to be CJ Carr versus Steve Angeli. My assumption is if Angeli doesn't get the job, he'll transfer because I do think Angeli will be a decent quarterback elsewhere. I'm not convinced on him, sold that he's the future that's going to lead us to a national title, but uh, I think that'll be really interesting to watch when they have the blue and gold game in the spring. But
Mhm.
I'm at just like a completely different mindset with Notre Dame than I ever have been before, where it's not all doom and gloom now that we lost. That like we'll never get back here again, which is what
Right.
I felt like after that Alabama national championship a couple years ago.
That one
It
was especially bad because they had, like, the whole Manti Te'o thing happening in conjunction with it, and that was just yeah, that was rough.
that they had that going into the game. Their quarterback Everett Golson that year ended up getting suspended for the entire year following for I think it was cheating on a test at Notre Dame,
Mhm.
which is like a big, big, big no-no
Right.
for a school like Notre Dame. And I do wonder if they kind of knew that going into it. Notre Dame just had no business being on that. They deserved to be in the national championship game. They had no business being on the same field as that Alabama. I think Manti Te'o came out when they were talking for media leading up to this game. They talked about how when Notre Dame was waiting for Alabama to come out of that locker room that game, when they finally did, and Notre Dame saw just how massive and big that team was.
Yeah.
Like literally, Mateo turned around and just saw a bunch of guys that were deer in headlights. Which, if you watch that game, it was just a straight up ass kicking. So something's different with Notre Dame now. I really, really, truly believe Marcus Freeman's going to win a national them.
Mhm.
I think we finally have gotten over the hump of kind of being a laughing stock, of being a team that's always overrated, that doesn't deserve to be here. Where we've shown that we've deserved to be here. I think now it's just a matter, and we've seen what we have to do to now take that extra leap to beat a
Mhm.
team like Ohio State. We need to have the air attack. We need to have, and Riley Leonard deserves all the credit too. I think he had a great end of the season, but I think we need to get a quarterback that's going to be able to both air it out and move the ball on the ground. But next year they can focus on their two running backs and have their quarterback be somebody who's gonna throw the ball.
Mhm.
I really truly believe within the next 5 years Notre Dame will win a national, which is something I have never ever thought before in my life. So,
Right.
um, not since Brady Quinn, the Brady Quinn's year. Like if they had beaten USC, I think in 2004,
Mhm.
2003 or 2004, if they had beat UFC that in that game, that was a big Bush push game where to win
Right.
take the lead. Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart got pushed into the end zone.
Mhm.
Um, uh, not since then have I really thought that Notre Dame had a shot at winning that chip, and I really truly believe that now. And I
Yeah.
think next year will be it'll be one of two things. It's either going to be that year that we take the leap, and we're a dominant team, and whether we win the national championship or not, they're a team that has a great year, and you can tell that they've improved on both sides of the ball. Or we're all going to be eating our shoes if Notre Dame comes out next year and they're a 2 or 3 loss team.
Right.
So I believe in this coaching staff. Al Golden, who is their defensive coordinator. I believe if it's not official, it's going to be official soon that he's taking the Bengals defensive coordinator job, which is where he coached previously. So I can see that. He's a great coach, but I do think that they'll still have the foundation to kind of continue without him. But he was awesome this year too. And I'm glad to see him go to the Bengals because I like Joe Burrow. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that defense needs as much help as it can get.
yes, they do. So yeah, that's kind of just where I'm at with Notre Dame. I think a lot of fans are in that spot now too, where it's tough to take away positives after a loss like that. But I definitely felt two different ways between the end of that first half and then the end of the game with where Notre Dame was at, and it's just I only have positives going forward. I have to, or else I'm gonna succumb to the other 30 years of misery that I've faced my entire life.
No, I think, as a fairly impartial outside observer, I do think you're spot on with Notre Dame, being on the ascent and, I mean, I think the bad mojo with, like, Brian Kelly being gone, like, officially, like, it's so far gone now. I don't know how you felt about him, but I didn't think he was a great coach.
I think Brian Kelly he deserves credit for ushering Notre Dame kind of into this new era of college
Mhm.
football where we talk about Brady Quinn. Those years with Charlie Weiss. Charlie Weiss probably had about 2 good years and then
Right.
had about 2 or 3 really bad years where Notre Dame was in a really bad spot. Um, and there's so much behind the scenes stuff too that with a lot of college football teams, but specifically a team like Notre Dame where they have so much just tradition and back end stuff, and their alumni are massive, massive parts of their football team specifically. Where a guy like Charlie Weiss never like hated working with the alumni. There's a big religious aspect there too. Obviously, them being a Catholic school, where there's a lot to do with them, like going to church. Obviously the their former athletic Father Jenkins was a massive part to do with the school. Um, and then obviously Brian Kelly came and uh, in his third year, that was the big thing for Notre Dame coaches in their third years when they won national championships. So we had Air Parsegian won in his third year, um, I believe with Joe Montana. Um, if I'm wrong, people are gonna come for me for that because I don't remember if Joe Montana was his quarterback or not. We obviously had Lou Holtz winning his third year in 1988, and then we had Brian Kelly in his third year make it to the national championship game. Um, and then of course this was Marcus Freeman's third year, uh,
Right.
and and he made the Natty again. So there's like that weird aspect
That
of
is it's funny,
the
yeah.
third year for coaches. But there's a massive like tradition. I've been to Notre Dame a few times. The Catholic Church is a big part of that school. And even I'm not a religious person, but it just there's something magical about being at that campus. But the alumni are a massive part, and I think there's a lot of managing that. And I don't think that Brian Kelly um, ended up buying into a lot of that in the end. And so, Notre Dame was in a national championship with him. They had those games where they beat Clemson. They made the playoffs and then got smoked by Clemson that year. But Brian Kelly was able to kind of usher them into this new era. And I did hate the way Brian Kelly went out, but then he also got us Marcus Freeman. I remember Brian Kelly was quoted when he first hired Marcus Freeman that he was going to be the next head coach of Notre Dame.
Mhm.
I didn't think it was going to be that soon,
Right.
but he got us here, and Brian Kelly's now going through a very, very tough time in LSU.
Mhm.
And I think he's probably catching too much slack, especially for that quote that it was kind of like Brian Kelly left Notre Dame because he wanted to win national championships.
Mhm.
I do think that Brian Kelly, um, he I don't know if he should keep his job at LSU, but that has nothing to do with Notre Dame.
Right.
I just think Brian Kelly deserves the credit for the job that he did while he was here, but I am very, very happy that Brian Freeman is the head coach. And I also a lot of rumor about him potentially going to the NFL. The Bears were a big job. Very happy Ben Johnson is now the Bears head coach. That kind of means that Marcus Freeman. I've been saying Brian Freeman this whole time. I'm
No,
gonna
you
edit that out.
did one time, but
I
that's
see
totally
Brian.
fair.
Marcus Freeman, my boy. Um, uh, uh, Marcus Freeman is he's a guy that has bought into all that tradition with Notre Dame. He's brought back a lot of traditions of like things they used to do. The big one is walking from the church to the field house before
Mhm.
games. That's a huge tradition for the team that he's brought back, and he works well with the alumni. So
Mhm.
Marcus Freeman is just he is the guy going forward.
Awesome. Love to see it. So hopefully we'll keep covering Notre Dame as long as you want to. I'm super down. 'Cause we don't have a college football aspect of this channel, and like I don't have the deep knowledge of college football like you do. So that it'd be great if you're up for it.
I'd love to be back, and then next time I won't call him Brian Freeman like I just did like 3
Just
or
one
4
time.
times.
It's not,
So
it's
when you
all
post this on TikTok, put like an asterisk saying
mhm.
Dylan clearly met Marcus
Yeah,
Freeman.
yeah. I think people will understand. It'll be
And I
all right.
also think I incepted myself of Brian Kelly and Marcus Freeman, merging them into one, and that's not
Mhm.
right. That feels
Doesn't
like
help that my
incestuous.
name is Brian is on the
Yes.
screen.
Well,
Like,
Brian out, so it's not
yeah,
accurate.
yeah. Imagine how I feel, Dylan. Gotta live with this.